All right, let's go ahead and get this party started. Everybody hit record. Good to see you all out there. If you're not joining us live and you're listening to this down the road, that's okay. We welcome you. If you're jumping in late, just pick up a pen and a pencil and we're going to get started. As I mentioned earlier, tonight's topic was finding talent. And I had received last year sometime from our partner, Rachel. She sent an email. I'll read it to you real quick. It says, "Hey, Rod and Jim, as we are looking at topics for the year ahead, something to keep in mind that I've experienced, and I know a few other business owners have shared with me too, is that this virtual work world is tricky, and lots of young people are taking advantage. We take for granted that our staff or vendors or freelancers are going to work as hard as we do, or care as much as we do, when in fact, a lot of them do the bare minimum. And the quiet quitting, that's the first time I heard that term. The quiet quitting is really a silent and deadly plague sweeping through small businesses." So it's taken a good year to get back to this topic, but it is relevant. And I think what happened here, I've put a little bit of thought behind this. I think what was happening here is when we had the COVID pandemic and everybody started working remotely and working from home, it changed an entire paradigm. There was a paradigm shift, and that shift has not rectified itself yet. You can go to any small business, fast food places to large corporate businesses, and there are so many gaps and holes in that they can't find people and they can't seem to keep people. And it's an anomaly. I've talked to people in all different kinds of, from marketing to sales to wholesale, retail, and nobody can put their finger on what happened. We know when it happened, and we kind of know why, because it just shifted the paradigm. But something critical has changed in the economy. And that economy affects every single one of us as business owners, as entrepreneurs, and whether we're working for someone else as an entrepreneur or we're looking to hire and build and grow our own businesses, we have to know what's happening out there in the real world. And this quiet quitting is quite a phenomenon, as I've found out. And just putting my basic practical common sense hat on, the first thing I think about is if you give people a reason not to work, as opposed to a reason to work, they're going to take the reason not to work. That's just the long and the short of it. Human nature is still human nature. And so you can get beyond some of that. And here's my first quote today is from myself. And this is what I say. What you tolerate is what you will foster. So in your business, if you're willing to tolerate slack and decreased productivity and people doing the minimum, that's what you're going to foster. So it's up to you as the leader of your company or as the leader of yourself or your team. If you're working for someone else, this still pertains to you because you don't want to be that person. When they're looking to hire or someone comes in from an outside talent pool and they're looking to recruit, you want to be the person they're looking for and looking to. So you want to be that person no matter if you're working for someone else or working for yourself. And here's the other one. I know I've said it on this platform before, and it's not going to be the last time you hear it out of my mouth. If you've got a problem employee, it's on you. You've either hired wrong or you've trained wrong. And you've got to fix it. Right? So the first thing here we're going to be looking at tonight is hiring right. That's the topic, finding talent. So that'll be the easy part, but training is on you. And training isn't just on the job training. It's not just training hard skills. You've heard Jim and I on this over and over again with soft skills, people skills. They are so important. And that's just getting a read on people. You have to be able to read people. And if you're not good at reading people, you need to find somebody who is to start stepping into that role and work on that skill until you feel comfortable with your read on people. So first, let's backtrack just a little bit, and I'm going to tell you what I found about the quiet quitting. We're going to talk about that first. So what quiet quitting is, it's characterized by employees who reduce engagement, They decrease productivity. They avoid responsibility. They lack enthusiasm, and they reduce communication. They stop communicating, right? So even if they used to get along even outside of work and hang out with people, all of a sudden they're distancing themselves. So those are just some clues that something's going awry. And that means that you might have an opportunity, if you're lucky, to rectify the situation. And maybe you want those people gone, right? And in Rachel's email, she talked about young people, that it happened to be in young people. Well, I can tell you from past experience, it's not just young people. When people have had enough, when people no longer care, it doesn't matter if they're 60 years old and 2 weeks from retirement, they can quietly quit on you. If their heart's not in it, it's not in it, right? And you're better to just let them go early, right? If you've got somebody who's working the back row in the back seat, cut them loose. Offer them an early out. Don't make it a point to hang on to those people. And if it's you, you need to get yourself re-engaged, right? If it's you, you need to make sure you're keeping your productivity up. You owe it to the person who's employing you, right? You owe it to your partners to do what you're supposed to be doing. And it's up to you to stay in the responsible seat. You need to be responsible. And it's up to you to keep your enthusiasm up. And that's part of what I like about groups like ours. It's not just a bash session and a teaching session, and a motivation session, but it can be an inspiring session. You need to know that you're not alone out there. There are other people going through this, other people who have gone through this, and there are tools and tricks and tips that you can gain to make it better. And you can, in fact, even if you've had a bad experience, we all have bad days, right? I know. Anybody here had a bad day besides just me at work, right? You can't be up 100% all the time. It's just impossible. So let's just take that off the slate and say, we know you're going to have down days, but you've got to get over that. You've got to be in charge of your behavior even when your emotions are down. And I mentioned this a few weeks ago, but behavior dictates your emotion, not the other way around. When you're a responsible adult, your emotions don't matter. It's your behavior that does. And your behavior will eventually steer your emotions in the right direction. So get plugged into whoever you need to get plugged into. Stay plugged into those groups and get yourself online and on track. So attitudes about work and workplace expectations. So I did a little AI research here. I'm having some fun with this because it's just nice to know what's out there. And remember, GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. Whatever's being programmed in AI is what's coming out. So it's quite interesting. I've done several different challenges with this stuff, and believe me, there's a bent and a slant on everything you look up with artificial intelligence. So you need to put your discernment hat on when you're going through this stuff. So number one, it's not just a generational thing. Let's take that off the table, but it tends to be more prominent and prevalent with the Generation Z and the millennials. Okay, so that's just what they're finding out there. And what they think is that it's because that generation, those people are more accustomed to using passive forms of communication, like texting, email, and social media. In other words, it's easier to be disengaged if you're plugged into all that other stuff. It's easier to disengage from the real world if you're plugged into an alternate world. That's a scary thought. And that's a tip for all of us. We can't be so plugged into technology that we're forgetting about the real relationships that really matter, because it's too easy to bail out and cop out on these things. So the other analogy I had here was cramming. And I don't know any of you who were in high school, if you go back that far, if you're in high school or if you're in college, I worked with people, I studied with people that waited until the last minute. It didn't matter what the class was. Didn't matter the coursework. It didn't matter if it was a major paper or if it was a major exam. They waited until the last minute to read all the assignments, to get all the studying in, and then they would cram it all in one night, spend 14 hours drinking coffee and eating ramen noodles to cram all this information in their head so that they could go take a test or finish a paper. And I saw people do that with major theses even. They didn't work on it for an entire semester or 2 semesters. They would do it all at the end in a 1 month or 2 month period of time. Just cram it in, cram it in, cram it in. Not a good way to go. Cramming is procrastination. And if you've got someone who would rather wait till the last minute to throw a job together, that's not the right kind of person to be hanging out with. It's not the right kind of person to hire. It's not the right kind of person to partner with, right? You want someone who can plan ahead and methodically take that bite out of an elephant, the proverbial bite out of an elephant one bite at a time, instead of trying to just gorge on the whole thing. So people who cram tend to be those kind of people, all right? When they work, how you do anything is how you do everything. And if those are the kind of people that are cramming stuff into the last minute, then that's a danger sign. Well, how do you know that if they're working remotely? How do you know that if they're working remotely? This is where it comes back on you. If you're working with clients and even contract work, and you're wanting a project done, you say, this is what I need, this is the deadline. You need to put some waypoints in on those deadlines. It's up to you to say, I would like to see the first working draft of this project, a week and a half from today. And I want 3, not just one final product. I want 3 drafts so I can select the direction I want to go, right? You have choices to keep people in line and productive along the way. Don't let people slack, because if you tolerate it, it's what you're going to foster and it's what you're going to get. So you have to be responsible and realize, know, and understand that in today's workplace, people will slack unless you raise the bar. You're going to have to raise the bar, raise the bar, raise the bar, and hold them accountable. And if they don't want to work with you, then you don't want to work with them. Okay? Find the people who are willing to do what you ask them to do and get it done. So that's a challenge for each and every one of us as workers, as well as workforce people who are hiring and looking to expand our businesses. So procrastination is a killer. It will kill your business. And if you get a bunch of procrastinators on board, your business is going to suffer. So the other thing is, ask your employees or your potential hires what their expectations are. Some people don't expect to work a lot. And we've seen this. We've had these conversations. I've had these conversations with lots of people. Some people just expect to show up and get a paycheck and get a pat on the back and a thank you and we're just for showing up. Well, that's not good enough. Ask people what their expectations are for the job. If you're in that hiring mode, what is it that they really expect out of it? Just a paycheck? Or do they expect to learn something from you, to gain something from the experience, to move on, right? What do they want to walk away with? And if it's just a paycheck, you might want to dig a little bit deeper. If you're just looking for a laborer, even a laborer should want to come in and learn something new. Even laborers, I've been a laborer, right? I've done dirt work. I've done landscaping. I've worked in the woods. I've sawed trees down. I've worked on fires and construction. I always wanted to still learn something every job I did. You want people who are teachable and people who want to learn. So keep that in mind. So here are a couple of things that again, with AI, things that you can do to improve this quiet quitting. And I'm not even going to go through all of them, because some of it I honestly think is just BS, right? This is all that feel-good stuff that is killing modern ingenuity and entrepreneurship. So I'm going to read through them first, but then I'm going to tackle what I think is most important. So open communication. I'm sorry if I'm not calling you in and we're not having a little friendly uppity date, tea conversation every day. I don't give a crap. That's not what we're here for. We're here to work, right? It can't just all be open communication. Open door policy, being willing to take and ask and receive criticism is one thing, but to have a ooey gooey fuzzy workplace, it's just not realistic. Too much is happening on the other end that people don't get to see or even comprehend what's understanding all the time, or how it functions. It's beyond their capacity. And maybe if they want to learn, that's one thing down the road. But the open communication is what they say. And I'm saying, take that with a grain of salt. Recognition and appreciation. Okay. People need to be appreciated for the work they do. Everybody deserves to be appreciated and respected and recognized for the work they do. And if you're not willing to do that, then that's on you. So that is a valid one. The number one people quit and leave jobs is lack of appreciation. It's been that way for decades. That hasn't changed. Harvard does a new study, and Stanford will do a study, and they all come up with the same thing: lack of appreciation. It's not time off. It's not money. It's not benefits. It's not bringing your dog to work and getting a free cup of coffee every day. It's lack of appreciation. So that's a big one. Career development. Unfortunately, a lot of jobs that are out there, and if you're hiring somebody and you just need to fill that slot, you need a warm body literally to do customer service, there's not always career development, right? But it can be meaningful work on the path to a different career, right? We've talked about this before too. Meaningful work. This is one of the things that AI says. People need meaningful work. Well, this is what I say. All work is meaningful. All work is meaningful. And if you haven't gotten yourself to the point where you've found that all work is in fact meaningful, you need to go back to that recognition and appreciation factor again. Autonomy and responsibility. Absolutely, but only after people have been trained. People do want autonomy and responsibility, but you can't let them flounder. You got to be there to catch mistakes. You got to be there to correct and keep them on the right path. Flexibility, right. Well, who doesn't want flexibility? That's part of the reason we've gotten into this problem. I want to work from home. I want to do I want to do everything, but I want to do it on my time frame and my way. Well, that's not the real world, folks. It's just not. That's a danger zone, and it gets right back into the cramming. If you let people have all that flexibility, they're going to use it. And they're going to be surfing on the web, surfing on the social media, shopping online, or literally out windsurfing instead of working on your project. So you need to put the parameters in there. Flexibility is not what it's all cracked up to be. A positive work environment, we all want that. I think we can create that no matter what. Clear goals and expectations. And that gets back to what I said before. Ask people what they expect out of the job. If you're looking for a partnership or vendors even, what is it they expect out of this relationship? Are they there to help you grow? Or are they just there to service an account and make sure that they're getting their paycheck? Find the people who are willing to work with you to grow, not just the people who are there to serve you, right? Regular feedback, definitely important. To me, that's just common sense. If you're not providing, receiving regular feedback, you got a problem. Challenging opportunities. This can be fun. Find ways to make it fun for your employees at work, right? Have contests, sales contests, or best customer service thing. Have fun days, play dress up day. You can make it fun. You can change things up. It doesn't all have to be just stuffy work environment stuff. Employee well-being, to me, it shouldn't be my responsibility to take care of an employee's mental health. But because we're people and we care about people, we need to at least be able to direct them to be able to know when someone's having a bad day. And if it's truly something that's going to affect their work, send them home, right? Give them a paid day off. Do what you have to do, because employee well-being goes a long way. And that gets into that appreciation factor again. And then they have recognition programs. That was the other thing. Career pathing, peer interaction, and addressing concerns. So those are some things that, to me, it's mostly common sense, but it's not anything that's beyond any of our control. So now here come the bullet points for tonight. All right, you got 7 of them. This is when you're looking to hire, these were actually from Maury Schechtman in one of his books, and I agreed with it so much I took notes and I wrote it down. When you're looking for candidates, these are the things you want to look for in candidates. And sometimes you can't ask certain things in interviews, and maybe that's a topic we'll get into another time, what you can and can't ask in interviews. But you can always find creative ways to get this information out of people, including having your staff do it before an official interview. So here's number one. This is what you do to vet candidates. These are the kind of people you're looking for. Number one, look for candidates whose families moved a lot when they were growing up. Why? Because they tend to be adaptable and flexible, right? So you look for people, and maybe that's a military family, or maybe their dad might have been in construction. Like, my cousin, I think they moved 5-6 different times. Their parents flipped houses, right? But they had to be adaptable and flexible. Number two, look for candidates who were driving motorized vehicles before they were 12 years old. Why? It showed a level of responsibility. And it's not just, and they also were thrill seekers in a lot of cases. They're the people who are out there on the edge, right? Whether they were on motorcycle, gave them more freedom, more autonomy, and the responsibility, all those things. I worked on a ranch, the Schwend Ranch, and we used to laugh because Cody Schwend was a gangly little kid. By the time he was 12 years old, he had wrecked 5 pickups. Drove them into tractors, drove a couple of them off of bluffs. This kid was wrecking trucks all the time, and not necessarily, he wasn't totaling them out, but this kid was he wrecked 5 pickups by the time he was 12 years old. And he's probably a great driver today. I'm sure he is. He's still a rancher. But, those are the kind of candidates you're looking for. I got my first ticket when I was 12 years old, for those of you who want to know. We'll talk about that another time. Here's some other things. Look for candidates who made a real and meaningful contribution to their families. People who actually had to help their families with babysitting, so their parents could work, or taking care of the kids after school, or actually had to help cook meals, or maybe they even contributed financially to their family, right? People who own their own automobiles because their parents didn't buy it for them. You can find that information out. And what does that tell you? People who are meaningfully contributing to their families, they're part of a team. They understand it's not all about them. Next, look for candidates who had part-time jobs while they were in high school. Work ethic. People who learned to work and juggle work while they were doing something else with school, right? Scholastic sports, extracurricular activities, and a part-time job. Those people were a lot more with the work ethic and, again, the adaptability and flexibility. Look for candidates who went to work full-time after high school. This is important, I think, because most people in America today go to school when they're 5 years old, kindergarten or pre-kindergarten now, start at 4, and they're there for 12 years, and they go from there, because this is the whole social track, is to launch them straight out of high school into college. That's the success track, right? That's the paradigm we're in. What that gives you is someone who's been institutionalized, right? For 16, 17 years. Would you rather have somebody who had some experience, or someone who's been institutionalized for 16 years? Away from the real world, away from what you're wanting them to be a part of for that long. So look for candidates who spent some time after high school. And even so far as to go 3 to 5 years of work before they went to college. Not just a couple of years, but maybe they waited even longer to go to college. Maybe they went to the military first and then went to college. Again, you're going to get people who have a more practical worldview and more knowledge about how things actually work. That's going to be both on the social end of things as well as the business end of things. Look for candidates that grew up in multi-sibling families with spacing between children of no more than 5 years. Why is that important? because it's not all about them. It's not all about entitlement. If you grow up in a family that's got several siblings, you know that you're not the most important person in the world, right? The world doesn't evolve and revolve around one person. It's the whole, it's the unity, it's how everybody works together. Those people realize the importance of sharing. They realize the importance of giving and sacrifice. So that's another thing you look for. Next, look for candidates who grew up in multi-generational families or had a tie with multi-generational grandparents, especially those who lived through trying times. Self-made, if your grandparents, or some of us even our parents, that went through, the tail end of the Depression or went through major wars, who have overcome post-traumatic stress syndrome. It teaches a different worldview, and it also shows that those people are teachable. And more importantly, and we talked about this last week, it's the values. Those multi-generational values that we seem to be so lacking today are passed down, and the importance of those are shared multi-generationally. And we need to try and foster and get some of that back. And lastly, look for candidates who experienced the loss of an important relationship, a family member, a relative, a close friend. And I'm going to take that a step further even and say, ask someone if they've had a favorite pet when they were growing up. And did they have a loss of that pet? Were they there when that pet was put down? Did they have to go through that suffering? And what that does is it's an empathetic viewpoint of the world. You can't go through close suffering and close loss without being changed and influenced by it. And you want those people who have experienced that, because it gives them a greater depth of empathy and a greater depth of understanding. And they also know how to suffer and endure. And those are two critical things. If you're going to be successful in any business, you're going to have to learn how to suffer and endure. And if you want to surround yourself with people who have had nothing but the easy life and the silver spoon and everything's given to them, and the expectation is everything's going to be hunky-dory, and then the moment it's not in your business or in your leadership under your management, you're going to have a problem. So surround yourself with those kinds of people. And whether you look at it in those terms, or whether you try and find those values, again, everything I mentioned with those, the work ethic and real world practical views, all of those things are important. And you have to get to the point where you can read people. And you have to get to the point where you can ask the questions that get the valuable information out. And the biggest thing, the takeaway from all of this, is when you've made a mistake, cut your losses. You've got to be able to let someone go if they're the wrong fit for the organization, if they're going to start dragging you down, or others, because if there's one, they'll find the next one, because no one wants to leave alone. They never want it to be just their fault. They're going to rally. They're going to get other people behind them. They're going to find every little thing and start nitpicking. So you've got to be on top of it. You have to know your people. You have to be engaged with your people. And then those people will help you find new talent as well. And they're going to help you find people like what you're looking for. So go within your own talent pool to find new talent. Use that talent to recruit new talent. And every time you're out, forge a relationship with the people that you're working with. Forge that relationship and figure out what talent that person has that's serving you your coffee, that's checking you out at the grocery store, that's checking you out and helping you out at the ranch supply store, wherever you happen to be. Always be looking for new talent. You don't know where that next best relationship is that's going to make you that next killer sale, or you may even make a new sale out of it. So if you're constantly looking for talent, you're constantly going to have your best foot forward, your best face on, and you're going to attract the kind of people you're looking for. So that's it in a nutshell. Jim, I saw you taking some notes. I'm going to turn this back over to you first, and then we'll open it on up for questions. If anyone's got any questions or comments about this particular topic, we'll go straight on into it. Jim?
So, yeah, I want to touch on the last thing you said, by the way. If you're constantly looking for talent, like the person at the counter at Starbucks or at the feed store, in that environment, you're able to ask a lot more questions because it's not an interview at that point. So you can go through some of those things like you talked about, or get to know them a little bit deeper before you even get into an interview scenario. So that was a good point. Always be looking. I've hired people that were bellmen, bartenders, Starbucks baristas, all from being out and about. So good job on that. It's interesting. My mom found some books in the trash last week, and she's like, "These are too good to throw away." Well, one of them was this Trump, How to Get Rich. The other one was a book, Lincoln's original manuscripts, both interesting. So today I thought, I'm going to read a little bit of this Trump book, How to Get Rich. I only read the first 5 chapters. 2 of the 5 were dedicated to hiring good people. One was about, hiring a good team. And then the other chapter was about hiring a good assistant. 2 of the first 5 chapters in his book about how to get rich were about hiring good people. So great topic. And look, I hope that everybody took good notes. And here's why. We have a member in this group. Now, this person has not been on a call since we started this. They were on the first 1 or 2, maybe. Has not been on a call since we started this. If you understand how this group works, is we have an incredible amount of assets on the back end. And we spend the beginning of every call talking about some of the basics of running a business, what it takes, how to do things to make everybody better entrepreneurs or better intrapreneurs. This is one of those, I don't want to say boring topics, but one of those staple topics of how to hire. Here's the funny part. That person that hasn't been on any calls, but the first 2 a year and so many months ago, called me a week and a half ago and is in the hiring process and goes, "Jim, how do I hire somebody? What are the steps? How do I do this?" And I'm thinking this whole time, like, wow, they really should be on this call. They're a paid up member. They have access, but they're not here. And there's 2 things I like about that. One is we're hitting on a topic that is a foundational, important element to owning a business and having people that work for you. But 2, it proves to me, longevity in learning and educating yourself eventually comes full circle and fills your needs. If that person was here tonight, he probably could save himself from making mistakes. Now, granted, I did give him everything I had on the spot, and I will forward this recording or a reminder of this recording, like, hey, maybe you should watch this because we're throwing the tools out there. But I just thought, how ironic. A couple other thoughts that I've had, the notes that I was taking, Rod, is, the topic was finding talent. And we always put that into a job employee scenario. But finding talent goes way beyond just finding good employees. Finding talent falls into good partners, good vendors, good customers, and the list goes on. And I know I've used that the last few weeks about taking the lesson here and expanding it beyond just the focus person of that lesson, like I'm doing right now. But, if you think about Rod's Lord exercise, and yes, Rod, I want credit for name dropping one of your tools on the back end of Y.E.S. And his Lord exercise is about asking questions. And when you get to know somebody, it's L for location, O for occupation, R for recreation, and D for dream. What do you dream about? If you're using Rod's Lord tool to get to know people, a lot of this stuff flushes out. And it's just another tool so that you can find not only good talent in employees, but good talent with people that you're working with or working for or working around. So I love that. And then I'll close my comments on this on a discussion I was having with my brother over the last weekend when I was in Bend, Oregon. As the CEO trustee of In-N-Out Burger for 35 years, he had over 30,000 employees. They knew a little something about hiring good people, and they always did. And we were talking about the quality of employees and layoffs and where economy's at and things like that. He said, Jim, I always work my ass off because if there was going to be a layoff, I wanted to be the last person they would lay off. You know, they would say, well, we got to keep Mark, you know, he's pulling his weight for everybody. We don't want to let him go. Let's let somebody else go. So if you're an entrepreneur working for somebody else, maybe you've got your entrepreneurial thing on the side. If you're working for somebody else, be the Mark of that scenario. Be the last person they want to let go. And if you're thinking, well, how do I become that person? Just reverse everything that Rod talked about tonight and the qualities that he's looking for in hiring somebody. Become that person. If you're not sure how to be the best employee, think about all those things that you took notes on tonight on what makes a great employee or a great partner. And you'll be the last person to be laid off. You'll be that entrepreneur that everybody wants. So I just want to add a little color or a little shift on that last topic there. So thanks, Rod. That's all the comments I had on the notes.
All right. Well, thanks for that. You got me thinking here. There was nothing else in the chat. Jocelyn, I can't believe you're related to the Kennedys. That's awesome. But the thing with Lord, I'm going to share this real quick. The location, you know, where you're from, occupation, what you've done, not just what you do, but what you've done, what you do for fun, recreation, and D, what's your dream? Quick story. While I was in the hospital, and I had, when I was cognizant, right? I had time with the day nurse and the night nurse. And it's when I was doing a walk. So I had to get up and walk around the ward and then back to my room. And in the time I walked from one end of the hospital complex that I was on, around the thing and back, I had done Lord on every nurse that had to walk with me on that. Every one. And I got back to my room. My wife was there waiting. And later on, one of the nurses came in and I said, oh yeah. And she and her husband are expecting their first baby in a few months. And my wife says, oh, you're pregnant, right? And this lady hadn't announced it to anybody. And I knew that she has a new dog, right? I knew the dog's name. I knew she wanted another one and her husband didn't want it. I knew that she was with her husband for 7 years before they got married, and they were in Colorado, close to where my daughter lived, you know, for a while. And I knew just from going through location, you know, where you're from, occupation, what do you do for fun, and what are your dreams? From the night nurse to the day nurses, I could get that information out in 5 minutes from anybody. And it's amazing what you can find about people. And it's amazing the depth of resources that people have, the depth of their experience. You know, just because they were nurses didn't mean that's what they were before. You know, they did something prior to that. And then they had a dream and they got involved, and this is what it was. And now their next dream is to be a parent, you know, and to take that to the next level. So, and then you take that and, well, what does your spouse do? You know, what does he do for fun? What is his expectation? You know, there's no end to it. And it gets back to what we've taught too with Carnegie, you know, the Carnegie course. And that is, you know, get people talking about themselves. It's not all about you. And when you get people talking about themselves, you're going to find a lot of information out. You're going to find important information out. You're going to find value information out. And by value, I mean, right, valuable information, because you're going to tap into their values. And that's ultimately what hiring right and finding the right talent is all about. So did I see Rachel on here?
I'm here, yes.
There you are, Rachel.
Hi.
Seeing how that original topic came from you with the quiet quitting, that's what started this whole thing. So I don't know if you were on the first part or not. I didn't see when you jumped in, but go ahead.
I heard some of it, and I wanted to add, I may have missed this if you said it first, but I like to hire people that have played on a team sport. I don't know if that came up, but it's one of those qualifying questions that I like to ask, because I feel like if you've played on a team, then you know how to work well with others, you know how to show up and not let other people down. So that's another thing that I look for. And then this one, I think, is probably unique to me, and it could be unique to any oldest child, but I like to know if now they're not just a sibling, but if they're the oldest child. People who are the oldest child tend to do very well in the account service area of marketing, because they're mostly type A organized people that can multitask and handle a lot at once. So you find a lot of people in my industry, I've asked over the years, that have been oldest siblings. So, I mean, there's no scientific evidence there except for my own experience, but that is something I do pay attention to. And yeah, I agree. I think hiring the right people is obviously, critical, because it's sort of like Gavin DeBecker. Is it Gavin DeBecker? No, it's Michael Gerber. Michael Gerber says in the E-Myth, you either work on your business or you work in your business. And if you just start a company to work in your business, then you are the worst boss in the whole world, because no one's going to drive you harder than you drive yourself, right? So you start a company to employ other people. So that is, really the secret sauce. And in order to do that, it's got to be the right people. Otherwise, you're just constantly training over and over again. So I try to tell my people that you are always looking to train your replacement. That is your goal, is to train someone to take your position so that you can move up, and that way you can go do the next thing. So I try to let them know 3 steps ahead. This is my vision for you. This is where you're going. It's your job to train your replacement so that you can take on the next thing, because there's always more work ready for you. You just have to show me that you're ready for it by showing that you're done with what you've already been handling. So that's kind of part of our stair-step ladder at Sunday Brunch.
Awesome. And it takes bad employees to sometimes ferret out the good employees. Sometimes you don't realize how good an employee is until you get a bad one. And then you think, wow, how did that get by? So yeah, it's all a learning experience.
The other thing that we've done recently in the last couple of years is give people the opportunity to do project work for us before we make them an offer. It's like, you can do project, then we'll take you on like a perma freelancer, then you're part-time, then you're full-time. So like you're slowly integrating in. It's like dating, right? Before you decide to get serious. And that's worked out really well. When we just met someone and we desperately needed an extra set of hands, and we hired them and we're like, here you go, here's the job. And they're like, oh, okay. They weren't really emotionally invested with us. And that never really worked out well for a long-term relationship with an employee.
That's really good advice. I can see where that would definitely work. And even if you're looking at, subcontracting workout, if you're subbing it out, that's where you find your next talent pool. We even had risk.
We even had 2 people come by the event last week, literally just because they really want to get hired. And we're like, we're not currently hiring, but you can stop by this event, try to be in our orbit, come to the things that matter to us, start hanging around, let us get to know you a little bit. And so, they made the extra effort and stopped by, and that doesn't go unnoticed. I like that.
That's awesome. Great. You're a master recruiter too, Rachel. Marketing and recruiting. I like it. We might have to branch out.
When I used to run big agencies, I used to be in charge of the internship program and of recruiting talent, and I would get stacks and stacks of resumes. And I got to tell you, there was this one girl, I've told this story so many times, but I don't think I've told it to this group, but her resume came across my desk and she was an okay candidate. Like, she was fine, but she wasn't standout amazing. So I didn't want to meet with her because I had a really firm line. And her resume came across my desk 7 times, and it wasn't all from her. She sent it a couple times. Then she had a couple professors from her school email me with recommendations. And then she had other people who worked with me also email me, because she started then going around me to I couldn't stop hearing her name. Eventually I said, fine, as a courtesy, I'll meet with her. What does she want? So I sat down with her. She totally impressed me with her homework, her research, in terms of she knew what we were working on, what was important to us. I hired her on the spot. it was the only time I've ever done that because she really wanted it. And I was like, all right, like this, she's hungry. If she's this hungry for this job, she'll do whatever it takes to get the job done. And she was spectacular. She worked for me for almost a decade before I helped her start another company. And she was phenomenal. So
the moral of the story is hire the stalkers.
Yes,
That's it.
she was a friendly stalker.
Right.
This was before social media was like a big deal. So,
right.
Yeah, she had to go
Friendly
old school.
stalker.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we don't have any other chats. If you do have questions about anything, not just this topic tonight, do put them in the chat, raise your hand so that we can get to you. But in the meantime, what I really want to, because we've got about 12, 13 minutes left, some highlights. And if it's not just from Rachel or Jim, anybody who was at the event and is on tonight's call, the event at Chapman University, I'd like to hear, some of your top takeaways. So let's spend the last 12 minutes doing a highlight reel of Chapman University and the Young Entrepreneur Syndicate.
I'll give you a highlight, Rod.
I don't see any hands up, so Jim, take it away.
Well, it was a great night, and I want to thank the members that came and showed up. Chris Mueller showed up early, so we had a good chance to catch up. And Chris, you know what? I appreciate the conversation and the fact that you pointed out, some of the things we talked about was worth the drive down. To me, that's somebody that's putting in the work. If I saved him a little time or a little money or gave him some direction or something like he suggested, it was worth it, So that's how these things work. You've got to be out there and getting in the mix and being a part of the process instead of from a distance. And that's not to say, if you couldn't be there because you couldn't fly, or that's not to say you should have been there. I'm just saying whatever it is that you can be involved with, it's important to get in the mix, be involved. And I just wanted to outwardly thank Chris for his extra help that night. The event was great, but what I wanted to bring up is just what I learned from Robert Greene. It was really like another history lesson when he talked about his book, 48 Laws of Power, and the way that he presented it to us that night through the Q&A. And by the way, if you didn't know, for those that attended, Rod actually drafted up those questions for us because we'd asked him to be a part of the event because we knew he couldn't be there in person. So Rod, the questions were phenomenal. They kept the night going, but it was amazing how for Robert and his intellect made us all smarter in the room. Along with tonight's theme and hiring people, his book, 48 Laws of Power, talks about the psychological side of men, our leaders, our business owners, or how we conduct ourselves, not just in business, but in life in general. And I thought it was a great understanding of his work of art. And for us, as it relates to this topic, what a great tool to read and have a little bit more knowledge and insights on how people act. And his point was, don't take this book and use it as a tool to be mean to people, but use it as a tool to understand how people act. And I thought that was great. And then my last observation on the night, and it was also a compliment to Robert, is if you were there with one of his books to get signed or you bought one that night, he stuck around until he signed every single book. And he didn't just sign them. He had a conversation with every single person. And I realized that the school itself was looking around like, is this guy ever going to leave? So I was very impressed with his ability to spend time with every single person, sign their books, tell a story, and get to know them. That's a real leader to me. That's a real influencer, and that's a real intellectual. So that's my observation. Sam's got her hand up, so we'll let her go.
Sam, go ahead. Unmute.
Hey guys.
Let's listen to your take. Hi there.
So I was at the event clearly. Even if I didn't want to be, I had no choice, right? Just kidding. It was awesome. I had a blast being there. I was so glad to just be able to be a part of it in person. At one point, we manage our farm and everything else. I'm like, oh my gosh, I might not even be able to go. Like, we don't have anybody to watch our farm. And it was something I didn't want to miss, and I'm so glad it all worked out. Rachel just pulled off a beautiful, everything about it was beautiful, even to the flowers and stuff. She just put her little special touches. it was a warm, awesome place. And I know it wasn't just like, oh, hey, we're going to pick this place. Like you had to do some research and figure out what to do or where it was going to be. And so, it all went down flawlessly. Rachel, at one point, it was funny, you made like oh, I haven't done this in a little while or been up in front of people, but you were so great at it that even if you didn't say that, nobody would have known. Like, I was just so proud to see you flourish and be in front of these people and speak from your heart and promote your book. I can't wait to read it. So we're looking forward to that. I'm getting my life back on a program here now that I have some time, and I say sometime, but we'll see how that goes. But I'm excited to focus on your book, and I know there's tons of things I'm going to benefit from it. Jim got up there and did his thing, and it was awesome to watch. But the one who I expected to go there and get something from David Meltzer, I was like, so fired up because I've seen so much incredible things that he's done in Jim's life. And he was great, don't get me wrong, but I was blown away by Robert Greene as well. Like, he's a total trip to listen to, and he keeps you engaged. And it was just an awesome, great event. But on top of all that, I sat next to these three young men. It's their freshman year of college, and they were just so excited for what's to come for them and to work. They're just like, we're so excited to be here and to work our butts off the next couple years to change the world, is what they were saying. To change the world and make their parents proud was another really cool thing. I'm like, I hope my kids feel that way someday, right? But there was people of all ages there, and everybody was able to take something from the event, which I had no doubt would happen. But I was just so proud of you guys. It was so awesome, and thank you for putting on that event.
Well, I'm going to give my hat tip to Rachel first, because Jim has raved about the job you did as well. And those nice touches are things, believe me, I never would have thought about, wouldn't have considered them, maybe in the future now that I've heard about them. So a great job all the way around. I'm just sad that I missed out on it. Chris, you wrote in the comments that you had a lot of takeaways. Do you mind unmuting and sharing one or two of the takeaways that you had from the event?
Yeah, how you guys doing? Well, for me, like I had talked to Jim early because I got there really early just to miss the traffic. Putting people in person is way better than meeting somebody on a Zoom call. And I do these types of things. I join these groups, not necessarily just for the content, but to network with real people and get real experience. I didn't know David Meltzer, or I think you might have been kind of offended. He gave me his book and I go, I don't need you to sign it. But, it's not one of the things that I look for when I do these things. And Robert Greene, I had never heard of. So there was another, just as I get older, I want to learn more and more and just take anything in. A lot of things don't pertain to what I want to do. I want to be a one-man show. I don't want employees. I want to make my time. Part of my leaving my regular job will be just, freedom and to make my time and my choices at that. But I've worked in all sorts of industries, from being a graphic designer to marketing, and I've done special effects, props, carpentry, you name it. I've done all sorts of things. So any new experiences, new people I can meet that help me along the way, that's what I'm there for. So yeah, there's too many things, just the whole thing saying thank you in the morning and at night. He was right. The easy things are hard to remember. I remember it about midday. So, but yeah, and thank you guys. It was a wonderful event. Nice. And it wasn't too big, going to big events where there's too many people, there's no personal interactions really, getting to meet Fred in person as well, because we had talked on the phone because we live relatively close. That was nice to, put names to faces and everything else.
And I can't tell you.
That's awesome. Chris, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm so glad that you made it in person, and you're absolutely right. These Zoom calls, it's part of what was the undoing of the fabric of our society, I think, with everyone going to Zoom and that sort of thing. And the smaller events, I'm glad you appreciated that, because that tends to be more my style. I would rather be, in a place where I can meet people and talk to people than, be up on a stage talking to 2,000. I mean, you can do that too, but it's for a different purpose. So great takeaways. I appreciate that. Fred,
I'm gonna jump in. I just want to jump in really quick. Samantha, thank you for that. That was really nice. Thank you. And you know what, Chris, it was great to meet you in person. I didn't know that you were going to be there. It was so awesome. When you walked up, I was like, oh, I know him. He's like famous. Where do I know him from? I'm like, oh yeah, every Monday night on Zoom. Yeah, that's where I know you from. So that was great, and it was really nice to see everybody in person. And you know, a lot went into making it look, just so. And I'm glad that you guys appreciated it. So thank you.
Absolutely awesome. Got a couple minutes left. Anyone have any questions, other input? Fred, you were there. You want to chime? Are you in a spot where you can chime in real quick?
Yeah, let me if I can log in here. All right, can you
There
guys see
you
me?
are.
All right. So anyways, and I agree. I think that you guys did an outstanding job on the event. It was very personal, in an intimate setting. So I agree with Chris. The large events get a little bit taken away. Everybody seems to find their own little cliques, when it's networking time, the people that have known each other for quite a while. But there were a lot of new faces there. There were quite a few people from our group there that I had no idea lived in Southern California. And so it was nice to run into them and get to meet them. So that was really great. But there was a couple of key takeaways that were interesting. Like, first of all, with Meltzer, depending on what season you're going through in your life, he had kind of gone and hit some really key points that I'm going through right now. But it was so reassuring to see what he had experienced. And a lot of the people that we follow have similar experiences. There's tough seasons of your life and there's sunny seasons of your life. So rainy seasons and sunny seasons. But what it does is it kind of validates and gives you the checks and balances, if you will, as you're going through this process. And you can see this vision that you want to achieve. And it's a little easier to identify where you're at in the process. And it gives you a higher level of confidence to be able to kind of pinpoint where you're at, not only from an intellectual standpoint, but just in the process and the learnings that you've done. So a lot of the messages that come through and people's own interpretation of their trials and tribulations in life, at certain points in time, they connect with you in a certain way. But seeing them live in person was unreal. I mean, I think there's so much value in that. And then the same thing for Robert Greene. I had read his book or read a portion of his book and I took it out of context. I think I took it for face value, that it was some conniving ways and tools to use to fight your way through the battlefield, if you will. And the way he explained it so eloquently, it took me by storm. And then I was just like immediately captivated by the entire message that he had to share. And I didn't know that you were responsible for all the questions, but there were some pretty eloquent questions that came through. I was impressed by whoever wrote them and the people that contributed them. So kudos to you, Rod. But it was
Thanks, Fred.
It was amazing. And then my plus one is a good friend of mine. He's actually the best man at my wedding. And he just went to support me. And on the drive home, we had about an hour and 20-minute drive home. And he was blown away. He goes, the people that he met there, the content that was shared, the overall value. He goes, I thought it was going to be some rah, pump you up, send you out into the world and let you go make your mark. He goes, it was kind of a little bit of that, but he goes, it was so much more intimate. And I don't know, he just was very grateful and appreciative for what he had experienced being face to face with these people. So, and that goes for everybody in the group, Jim, Rachel, Meltzer and Robert Greene. So anyways, it was fantastic. You guys did a knockout job. And, I know that they got to be a little bit bigger to make it worthwhile, but it was nice that it was small. So I appreciate that. And thank you guys.
All right. Well, before we get off here, we're at our time, but I know that Jim had put out here too. We are looking for ideas for events in 2024. So put that in your thinking caps, everybody. If you're thinking about venues, topics, people, there's only one way to do it, and that's to have a dream, and we'll throw a lasso around it and see if we can't reel it in. All right. So if you've got ideas, let us know. And what did I see? Kalispell Ranch Party. Well, you know what? That's probably not out of the question. Absolutely love it. All right. I'm going to let everybody go. Thank you all for your input. Thanks for joining us tonight. You can catch us on the Young Entrepreneur Syndicate. Send your friends and let's make this a bigger party. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Rod.